price is king, it's where we belong. Stay with the dream, don't lose your way. Right way's the fire that'll light the day. Keep it simple, let the moment arrive. 3-8 trap keeps the hope alive. Hold on tight till the signal's near. Right way's the trail, we're breaking through fear.
Good morning, fellow traders. This is Doug Campbell with Right Way Options, and this is the morning market prep video for October 13th, 2025. Well, I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend, ready for another busy week in the market as we ramp up with earnings. We've got interesting news items that'll probably be rolling through today, and obviously seeing how the market will bounce back after Friday's big sell-off. Let's take a quick look at what happened overnight. If we take a look at Asian markets, a little bit rough over there, kind of a catch-up of the sell-off that we were experiencing on Friday with the new trade tensions, or the new tensions between the U.S. and China. If we take a look at Australian markets, they fell 75.50 or 0.84% lower. Hong Kong fell 484 points, 400.84, 1.52% lower. South Korea fell 2605, 0.72% lower. The Nikkei dropped by 491.64, 1.01% lower. India fell 58 points even, or 0.23% lower, and Shanghai dropped just $7.52 or 0.19% lower. If we take a look this morning, what's happening in European markets are bouncing back after the selling on Friday. DAX at this point is up 117.28 or 0.49% higher. FTSE is up $5.99, 0.06% higher, and the CAC is higher by 37.85 or 0.48% higher. Taking a look at U.S. futures here this morning, getting a big bounce back up here. At the moment, we've got Dow futures up 437 points even. We've got S&P 500 futures up 88.75, and NASDAQ futures up 469.25 after that big move that we saw on Friday. Let's take a look at what other things that are happening in here. Bond prices a little bit lower here this morning. We've got the 2-year bonds coming in at 3.50%, so dropping there in those 2-year bonds. 10-year bonds also easing up to 4.03%, and those 30-year bonds coming in at 4.62%. Now, as a result, we are seeing the dollar trying to move just a little bit higher here today. As you can see, we had kind of a turbulent little move here up through that resistance, and now trying to hold that area as support. Keep in mind, there's your upside trend. We may have to rest in here a little bit longer, so watch that carefully on the U.S. dollar. Dollar futures at the moment are up 15 cents. If we take a look at what we have going on here in our precious metals here this morning, couldn't say that for some reason. We've got gold zooming here this morning. Gold is really moving big. New record highs here potentially at the open. Right now, gold futures are up 97.80 an ounce, or 4,098 an ounce, pushing on through here to the upside. Silver is also having one whopper of a day, still down from its overnight high. We're seeing Silver futures up $2.45 here at the moment, 49.70 an ounce. Taking a look at copper, we've got copper gapping back up after pretty strong sell-off there on Friday. Right now up almost 16 cents here on copper. This obviously being copper minor in here, but a big bounce back nonetheless. If we take a look at platinum this morning, big bump to the upside, up 52.10 an ounce or 3.21%, and palladium continuing to bounce as well, up 21.40 an ounce or 1.64%. Looking at cryptos here today, cryptos are trying to bounce back here this morning. We've got Bitcoin at this moment up 547.27 a coin or 0.48%. If we take a look at Ether is trying to bounce back 22.27 here at the moment, 0.54% higher. And Solana, well, it's not having quite as much bounce back right now, only up about down 11 cents or 0.06% here this morning. So a little bit of disappointment there, but mostly bullish in those cryptos here today. Let's take a look at oil. Boy, oil really took a hit here on Friday, dropping hard, but we are bouncing up this morning. We're up $1.01 a barrel here this morning, coming in at 59.92 a barrel. Brent crude's coming in at 63.69 a barrel, and natural gas, well, it's still not having any love. Down not quite 3 cents here this morning, testing these recent lows here in natural gas. So what does all that mean for the day? Well, how about we settle in? Let's buckle up. Let's get ready for the Friday edition, for the Monday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thanks so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. Let's take a look at these index charts. Let's see if we can figure out how we might want to approach the market for today. Remember, we want to look at the markets for what they are, not for what we want them to be, and really try to shake off that bias. Now, one of the things that happens when we get these big zooming moves, and it's what I've been warning about, that low breadth of the market that we've been experiencing, really set up that big potential move here in the market, and I kept repeating that over and over and over. Unfortunately, today we're going to have to really watch for those whipsaws as well. And one of the reasons that is the case is, remember, bond markets are closed here today. We are going to see kind of an interesting day here as we, here in the United States, we have that celebration of Columbus Day. While that's going on, the big banks, the bond markets are going to be closed, and we're also going to see government offices and things like that closed here on the day. So as we bounce back up, just be a little bit careful and cautious, because we may be a little anemic in volume as a result. And then we also have to remember, we're going to start the official kickoff of fourth quarter earnings will be on Tuesday, and those big bank reports could certainly create some volatility here in the market. A little bit of uncertainty showing up there as well. So with that in mind, just be a little bit careful about racing in here this morning and thinking you should just buy everything up, that we're going to zoom right back to the top. Now, I'm not saying that's not possible. I'm just saying be really careful as we address these resistance levels in the chart. So you can see this morning we're bouncing right back up into this first area of price resistance in the chart, and if the bulls can break through there, then we're going to have to deal with this area of price resistance in the chart. Now remember, it's this first move to the downside like this, where we break a trend, we break support. That's only the first it's an uncomfortable move, that's for sure, but it's kind of the warning over the bow that maybe we've gotten a little bit carried away in our push to the upside. It all depends on how we address this rally back. Just keeping in mind, if we address this rally back and we struggle in here, if the big banks disappoint, if something like that occurs in here, we have that potential that we create the lower high here in the market. So we'll want to watch that pretty carefully. Don't just assume that we're going to just zoom right back to the upside, and particularly on a day where volume could be a bit on the anemic side here in the market. So if those bulls continue to find that inspiration here, we need to start breaking back through these areas here in the chart, and then we'll have to see if we can stretch right on through, retest these all-time highs here in the diamonds. If the bears were to have anything to say, well, we're in a pretty good area to find that. This big gap up here this morning could easily find a little bit of bear action. Remember, we want to keep in mind that our government is shut down and that we're going to face those big bank earnings tomorrow morning, and a little bit of uncertainty could occur in those big bank reports, so watch that carefully. If we take a look at our SPY, SPY, also good strong bounce back here. We ripped right back through this area of price resistance in the gap up open. If the bulls can continue to find that inspiration, notice there's a little bit of price action resistance right in there. We'll see if we can pop through that area and then right back up here to test this area resistance. If we can break through here, well, then it's right back up here to see if we can retest all-time highs and maybe break out. But if the bears were to have anything to say, if we were to reject this area here this morning and push back down, watch this area price support. That's going to be critical. And then, of course, a failure back down through this area here is going to continue to raise that concern and that possibility that we could come back and test lows that happened there on Friday. So watch that carefully. Watch for big potential whipsaws today. Even though we may be a little bit anemic in price, the buy the dip traders are probably going to be out there in force. But those bears may, for the first time, finally had a chance to get a little bit of excitement going on their side of things, and don't be surprised if they push back. If we take a look at our QQQ, big gap back up here in QQQ this morning in celebration. Now, this has that better chance in here because of that big stretch that we could push right through this resistance here today. And of course, big tech is the place where everybody is just unbelievably, in my opinion, overconfident here in those tech giants. And so we'll want to watch that as we start running through earnings. Keeping in mind there's an area of resistance right here that we need to break, and a little area of resistance right there we need to break, and then, of course, right up in here to all-time highs. If the bears were to have anything to say today, push back down. Let's look for a little bit of price support through this price congestion area right here. If the bears were to push this back down, and then if that fails, don't rule out that possibility that we could retest some of these areas of support if those bears were to really get going. And then IWM, pretty rough day there on Friday, but a big gap up here this morning, breaking back through some of these resistance areas in the chart. So if the bulls can continue to find that inspiration, we need to see if we can break this area of support here, resistance in the chart, and then start pushing back up toward these resistance areas in here, and then a breakout to all-time highs. But if the bears were to have anything to say, and I do think that may be a little bit more possible than a lot of folks might think, because of this big shocking move, there's going to be folks thinking that, well, hey, I've been I didn't sell on Friday. I kind of got caught flat-footed. If I get back up here, I'll certainly be selling, particularly if I see any kind of bearish activity to push us back lower. So watch this area here. If those bears have anything more to say here, I could really see a retest of this area of support. Now that's a pretty good area of support, but if those bears were to push us on through here, we may retest those lows that we saw here on Friday. So watch that carefully. Now, one thing we're going to have to be dealing with here is a pretty high VIX, and VIX makes all of your options and things like that a whole lot more expensive. And I would expect the market makers are going to move a little bit slowly here today and leave those bid-ask spreads wide with these big whips possible in the market. Now, if those bears can really get going, and I think there's a possibility they could here today, or excuse me, bulls really get going, there's a possibility they could. Well, first, I'm thinking we'll probably gap down below this area right here this morning and start pushing back down toward the support area here in the chart. So watch that carefully. In this range, we could see a lot of volatility. We could see a lot of big point whipsaws here today. If we can push on back down and retest this area of support, that's going to be pretty important to see if we were to break this on back through that area and giving up this little upside trend that we've got going on here in the VIX. Now remember, if the bears were to fight back on this gap down, we'll be watching. We could gap down into this zone and then see those bears push back, pushing back up in here. But just keeping in mind that volatility is elevated here, which opens up that door for big point moves in those swings and whipsaws. If we take a look at our T21.22, well, T21.22 was probably our best opportunity to see a big bounce here. We're down here in the bullish reversal zone. Not much space for us to move to the downside. To the bulls getting a big bounce here today. Watch that bounce back up here as we approach that 50% area here in the chart. If the bears were to fight back, it's in this region right in here that I would start watching for that potential resurfacing of the bears to push back. So watch that carefully. Remember, in this situation today, we've got a big upside opportunity for the bulls. If they can push on through, shake this all off, we could have a big upside day. But watch carefully once again for those whipsaws. If we take a look at our T21.08, well, T21.08 had a really bad day on Friday, like everything else did, but we broke back down below 30% here in the stock. With the gap up we have here this morning, I would look right in here. A push back up toward 40% certainly looks possible, and maybe even a stretch back up here toward 50% of the stocks above their 40-day moving average could be tested. Watch that carefully here. But also remember, those bears could be a little bit feisty in here, and we could see those big whipsaws pushing us back down to retest some of these areas as well on the day. T21.07 obviously broke down there on Friday. We broke this upside trend. The big gap up that we're experiencing this morning, watch that carefully. We could stretch right back up here toward that 50% of the stocks back above their 200-day moving average. And if they keep pushing, perhaps they can stretch right back through that resistance and be up here testing that recent resistance high in T21.07. Our T21.01, this will be interesting today. T21.01 for the first time experienced a good breadth push by the bears. They really pushed this up pretty strongly on Friday as we were selling, and it was on the bearish side. So if the bulls bouncing back this big on a day like today where we could be a little bit anemic, just be careful if we see this big push to the upside, but the breadth pulling back or even flat here on the day, that would be a concern. We need to see those bulls step up with significant energy here in that breadth to show some confidence that the bulls are regaining some control in here in T2101. So watch that carefully. We don't want to see that pulling back on this big move. And I do think there's a possibility we could see that because of the banks being closed and the bond market being closed. We could have that a little bit of an anemic move, even though we're gapping up substantially here today. Let's take a look at our economic calendar here for today, and keeping in mind, well, we've got the bond markets closed, so it's a really light day here today. We're going to get Paulson speaking here today, and that's about it on that economic calendar. And when it comes to the earnings calendar, it's also extremely light. This morning, we're going to hear from Fastenal. We got Fastenal reporting. That is moving lower after that report this morning. That's really the only notable here for the entire day is Fastenal. So we're not going to find much inspiration in earnings today. We do have another report. This PhD is reporting today, but it trades such low volume, it really isn't notable or any kind of a market mover to speak of. This afternoon, we have no earnings on the calendar, so we'll be just kind of watching the news, and believe me, we could see some big historic news here today. Hostages are starting to come home. The big peace agreement going on over there in the Middle East. There's going to be some incredible images that will probably be coming out of that. Of course, we have the news of the government continuing to be shut down. I don't know if there's going to be an upcoming vote today. Watch for volatility on that. Lots of concern because military is now in a situation where they're not going to get paid if we don't get the government open back up. And then we also have the uncertainty about the big bank reports that will begin Tuesday. So buckle up. We are probably not out of the zone for some big volatility here in the market. Let's take a look at some stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, everyone, if this is the first time you've seen these videos, if you could please click that subscribe button on YouTube and also click that bell icon when it pops up so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And if you find these videos to be useful or helpful, if you can do me that favor, click that thumbs up button, leave a brief comment. That helps the channel to grow. Thank you so much for everyone who takes the time to do that. I also want to remind everyone that I will be traveling this week for my son is getting married, and they got to get the tux packed up and head off. I will be gone Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the following Monday. So 4 days without the morning market prep, but I will be back on that following Tuesday the 21st. So kind of keep that in mind. I will be gone and there will be no morning market prep. I'm going to be one busy guy while gone. So just wanted to remind everyone, and I'll remind everyone again tomorrow. Let's take a look at some of these stocks that could be setting up. Remember, everyone, these aren't recommendations to buy or sell any security. You need to do your own due diligence and be very, very careful in this market because high probability we're going to see lots of volatility in the days ahead. Now, let's take a look at a few of those stocks in here. First off, take a look at BTU. Now, BTU, anything that has to do with energy and energy creation for AI, I think has some big potential. And BTU has been resting here for a few days. I would expect it may have to rest even longer. Zoom straight up in this parabolic move could rest for weeks, maybe even months. But if this were to take off and go early, I've placed a price alert here on the chart, watching for that potential that could push on through here to the upside. So watch that carefully. Take a look at Intel. With all of the volatility that we saw here last week, or at the end of the week. Intel really didn't suffer any major technical damage. We did break this support that we were consolidating in here, but notice this morning we're right back up here in that level. Now, once again, this thing moved pretty sharply, and this is not any kind of a stock that's heavily loved by the analysts out there. But that being said, we're in a very, very bullish pattern. If we can get enough bullishness going here, watch carefully here. Intel could pop right on through that area and start picking back up. You might want to keep an eye on IBM. Although it did break trend and support here on Friday, if IBM can get something going in here, we might be able to break this right back through. Get back up here and hold, and then we have that opportunity. We could start stretching out. Remember, all of these big tech giants are going to be reporting, but most of them will not be reporting until we get closer to the end of this month. So we've got a little bit more time to wait here on these tech giants before they report, so you'll want to keep that in mind. Keep an eye on things like J&J. We saw some pretty good holding here on some of these stocks that are in the healthcare sector. A little bit of a safety play in that healthcare sector. I would keep an eye on J&J. This is going to report, however, tomorrow. So make sure you have a plan to protect yourself if you're going to mess around with that. But watch that carefully here on J&J. Things like Moderna. Oops. Let's get the right ticker in here. Moderna had a pretty hard pullback there on Friday, but as you can see, overall, we still held on to this upside trend in here. With the gap up that we're seeing this morning, notice that we're going to gap right back above that area of resistance in the chart. Healthcare again, drug makers, things like that held up pretty well, so watch that carefully here. This could rest just a little bit in here, but I see that opportunity that could push on through to the upside. If you take a look at stocks like Merck, although pulling back in here, holding some support, watch that carefully. That could push through to the upside. Take a look at United Health. United Health had a pretty hard pullback there on Friday, but we could easily on this bounce back up, see that push right back through there, and then I would still be watching things like United Health for that opportunity in here to push right on up toward that 200-day moving average to complete that rounded bottom breakout pattern that we see here. So keep an eye on that. Look at any of those other health stocks out there. There are quite a few that you might want to be paying attention to in that area. Things like Medtronic, although it pulled back, notice that it could grab onto this support and holding right in there on trend. I could easily see that starting to push on through to the upside. So although there was bearishness in this market, there's also those little bit of glimmers of hope of good bounce backs could occur. Take a look at like CVS. Although we had a really rough day, CVS barely budged in here, and you can see there's that trend right now in that stock, and that possibility that could just push right on through here and see some new highs worth paying attention to. Of course, I'm going to continue to remind everyone, going to have to pay attention to these miners. My goodness, these bulls are strong in here on gold and silver mining, and keep an eye on anything in those precious metals for some opportunities. If gold is getting a little bit out of your price range here, remember you can take a look at things like PHYS. It's a physical gold ETF. Get you in there for around $30, $31 a share. That's a whole lot easier, and you're actually trading gold, not just paper gold. And if you take a look at stocks like PSLV, can also get you in quite a bit cheaper here if you wanted to play in that precious metal area as we continue to stretch. Now you do want to keep in mind that Goldman Sachs raised their price target. Now it's all the way out to the end of 2026, but they're suggesting 4,900 may be possible here in these stocks. And with the uncertainty that we're seeing now with China, we certainly will want to be paying attention to those areas. Let's take a look at utilities here. Utilities had a pretty sharp pullback, but notice this morning the gap up open. We're going to be right back up in here. XLU, I would continue to watch that. Obviously, what we've got going on with AI, the confidence in AI, we still have, we're still going to need power for all of this infrastructure build out that we're doing. So I would watch that carefully in here. That way it may move right on through to the upside. Southern Company, as you can see on Friday, really had no major problems, continued to move to the upside here in some of those utilities. So I would keep an eye on those, a bit of a safety play in some of those stocks and worth paying attention to. Speaking of safety plays, we did continue to see Hershey pulling back, but Hershey pulled back into this trend, keeping in mind it won't report until the 30th of the month, but watch this area in here. If we can hold this trend, there may be that opportunity. We push right back up through here and then right through my alert to some upside moves. We did see some of the defensive sector stocks starting to perk up a little bit here with the uncertainty in the market. Take a look at PepsiCo. Reported its earnings, kind of got off to a slow start on its earnings day. But boy, that really pushed through here on Friday, really showing some strength. So watch for a little rest or pullback in here. I'm not suggesting that you should chase this to the upside, but watch for a little bit of rest or a pullback and then look for that next opportunity in here on those defensive sector type stocks here in the market, worth paying attention to. I would continue to pay attention to things like in these parts companies. They continued to hold up pretty well here on Friday. Pushed a good strong move to the upside there on O'Reilly, trying to break through this downtrend. Now if the bears have anything to say, we will still want to be watching pretty carefully here for that resistance in the chart that could easily be right through here and send us back lower. But if the bulls can push this on through here, again, a little bit of safety play. We're going to continue to need these staples here in the market, even if we do sell off. So watch some of those areas of the market. They are still holding up pretty darn well. And last but not least, keep an eye on what's going on here in uranium. Uranium continuing to stretch on through to the upside. I'm still holding UEC. Love that chart. And I think there's some good upside potential there. Keep an eye on things like Cleveland Cliffs. Had a pretty strong pullback there on Friday, but as you can see, already bouncing back up in here. Watch that carefully in steel, because as we build out all this infrastructure, we are going to need lots and lots of steel. So watch this area of support, might need that rest, and then look for that next opportunity to the upside in steel. So with that, everyone, hey, I want to wish you all a fantastic day. I want to wish you great results in your trading. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I appreciate it. I will see you right back here bright and early Tuesday morning, and I wish you all the very best. Y'all take care and be safe. Have a great day, everyone.
Black and white candles, my stars in the dark. Price is my king, got that fire and spark. Rideways my ranch on the trader's trail. Trading with heart where the profits prevail.